I'm just now looking at the chat, and I'll say I appreciate people saying that I sound rational and smart. Thank you,
Did
chat.
I got it? So while we got this dead air for a second, let me ask you, what's the reception to you? Not switching sides because you're neutral now, but what's been the reception to this from both the anti-gamer gators and the pro-gamer gators?
Um, I have seen almost no mention. So okay, so the left attempts to not mention me at all because, as you know, what I just talked about, mentioning things means promoting them. But they try not to mention me. But the right generally tends to engage with me as though I am a Tumblr SJW and argue with me, and it's very hard for me to engage with it because I don't really know how to say I don't believe any of that and have them believe that that's what I am. Because if I say something like, hey, I don't believe that stuff. Usually people they're like, yeah, fine, all right, you don't believe that stuff. I'll believe it when I see it, and then they never see it because they don't really follow me, and they don't have to follow me. It's not their responsibility to pay attention to me. Um, but I generally get hostility from the right, and people work very hard to ignore me on the left.
So I posted it in general on the Discord and I
I'm
tagged your
looking at
name.
it. The
So
LTU
this is the
conference.
first tweet. The first tweet here. It says it's from Lyle at Lied15 on Twitter,
All
and
right.
he shared, "It's been 10 years. Now we got a national conference at Lawrence Technological University, maybe even a symposium about how do we solve a problem like Gamergate. LOLs," he says. And then he shares more information about the conference, all of its public info, of course. Um, so I've actually reached out to these people, and they replied to me, and I'm not going to share what they said because it was private correspondence. Um,
Sure.
but but I myself and some of the other GamerGate people are trying to basically convince them to take a more honest approach, I guess, because
Mm-hmm.
their initial perception was much like yours. In fact, I even linked them your stream, but it was the stream that got canceled because of the storm.
Ah, right, right.
but
Yeah.
so
Well, I wouldn't have mentioned. I will say today, I remembered that conversation I had on Facebook after, like, long after we had spoken yesterday, and I wouldn't have thought about it. I don't think. So
the
I'm
conversation
happy
on
that
Facebook.
we had to do this again. That conversation where somebody approached me on Facebook that gave
Oh,
me the whole context. I remembered that I think sometime this morning. So I'm glad for like as much as I didn't like the fact that we had to not do it yesterday. I am in some ways glad that we did it today.
so anyway, they originally take this very die-hard anti-Gamergate approach, and look, it could just because they didn't know. It seems like some people they just don't know that much about Gamergate. They read one article or
Sure.
two articles, and they're like, "Oh, okay, Gamergate, the people who hate women," and they don't really
Yeah.
know any of the details.
The defining characteristic of the Gamergator hates women.
That's
That's
what they
it.
thought. So here's what they said in their about page. Okay, I'll read this out. Actually, yeah, I'll link the about page. I'll pull it up on screen so everybody can read it.
Right.
Or actually, I think I linked the wrong thing on accident. Anyway, um, I'll just read it out loud. In August of
Sure.
2014, the hashtag Gamergate emerged online, used as a weapon deployed against women in the video game industry. Through online harassment tactics, including threats of violence, Gamergate constituted an instance of digital mass mobilization, deliberately attacking what was perceived to be a turn away from gaming culture's historical association with young male players. As commentators have since noted, Gamergate would become a precursor to subsequent social media mobilization, including disinformation campaigns, conspiracy theories, and online grievance culture. This conference seeks to revisit the social media, the social and cultural implications of Gamergate on its 10-year anniversary, to be held over 4 days in September 2024. This gathering of academics, designers, and community participants is designed to extend current conversations of game development and game studios beyond the existing heteronormative hegemonic discourses through an offering through offering an integrated, multi-perspective digital humanities retrospective focused on the social and technological sources and afterlives of Gamergate. This event is going to be held during Detroit Month of Design. So
Well,
this
was
is
it in
what
Michigan?
it's in Michigan, yeah. Lawrence
Oh,
Technical
dang.
University. And they call the conference ALT+F4. That's from their website. So what do you think of what they outlined here as their original mission statement?
Well, firstly, I have to apologize to everybody on behalf of Michigan. That's where I'm from.
Maybe you should go. You
Um,
should go. You should do it 100%.
I'm not. I don't live there. I don't live there right now, but I am from there. That being said, we did give you all Eminem and the White Stripes, so there's that. Um, anyway, I don't like that. I don't like all of the human resources talk. I don't like. To me, I do see like diversity as a good thing. But when I say diversity, I mean both what liberals might talk about diversity, like racial diversity, identity diversity, but also diversity of thought. I think that's important. I think that those things are important, but I don't think that these. I think when they start using this type of language, they're not really talking about diversity. They're talking about human resources. They're talking about demographics. They're talking about managing interactions, and I don't like that. I that's something that I don't buy it. When I see this stuff, I wrote a book called Woke Ouroboros: Segregation and Essentialism, and there's a large portion of it dedicated to. I did a very deep dive on like DEI stuff, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I consider that stuff oriented towards avoiding liabilities for corporations because here's the thing about conflict that you have at work or conflict that you have at work or I guess in communal spaces, I guess is the best place. I don't have a good way of putting it. I think conflict builds trust. Conflict builds relationships. It builds closeness. It build like you don't resolve conflict without engaging in conflict. And most human resources is oriented at avoiding conflict so that the company is not liable for that conflict in some way. And I think that it's ultimately ideology of segregation as opposed to ideology of quote unquote diversity. When I say diversity, I do actually mean inclusion. But when they say inclusion, they don't. They are talking about, in my opinion, segregation. I don't see that. And when I start hearing that language in something talking about how we solve the problem of Gamergate, which is it's been a decade, it's 2024. I feel when somebody says how do we solve the problem of Gamergate now, I'm like, what are you talking about? What world are you from? Like, are you insane? And no, and the other thing is, in a lot of ways, Gamergate can be perceived as an instance of cancel culture. Um, I think that it was ultimately because the grievances towards the actual institutions did get forsaken to focus on individuals. I do think that that's ultimately what cancel culture exists for because we all have various grievances with various ways that things work in society, and rather than addressing those, we end up addressing individuals. Um,
So
but it certainly wasn't the first instance of cancel culture. Like, it certainly wasn't the biggest instance of cancel culture.
well,
It's
I think
like
the
Me
Gamergaters
Too
got canceled.
is a far bigger.
Yeah,
Well,
sorry.
the Gamergaters
Well,
got canceled
they
kind of
got
as a
pushed. They
whole.
got pushed out of the Overton window, essentially.
Yes, I would say that that's a decent way of saying it. But what I'm saying is like Me Too also, in my opinion, Me Too is a bigger instance of cancel culture. And what happened on Tumblr prior to Gamergate is a bigger instance of cancel culture. Like a lot of I don't really consider Gamergate, although many do, I don't consider it to be special. I don't consider it to be a massive deviation from how things have been going the last maybe 25 years. I think that it's a logical progression. Um, and I think that a lot of what has happened since is much worse in the bad aspects of it. And in some ways, I think that a lot of the people who understood the institutional grievances, and I'm glossing over when I say institutional grievances because it kind of covers a lot. Um, but people are starting to understand that they do actually have to direct that at the source as opposed to at an individual. I don't know that that's the mainstream view yet, but I certainly have seen people who have been through more than one of these things, and I think that having been through Gamergate and having critically assessed it afterwards is actually a very positive thing for me personally.
Yeah,
I
same
think
here
that
actually.
I think that without that, I don't think I would have gotten to the level of criticism of media that I believe that I am at. I don't believe that I would have had the wherewithal to kind of question things because once I started seeing inconsistencies on quote unquote my side, um, Sarah Nyberg comes to mind. Um, that type of stuff.
That's an individual you don't have a problem calling out, I guess, huh? Oof.
No, but that whole thing really bothered me, and
Well,
I
it
was like,
should. Fuck. God damn. Sorry. Please go. Go.
well, anyway,
Oh.
I don't really think I need to get into it in any major
Well,
way, but
actually, I
having
haven't
the
talked about it in the book yet too much, other than like vague references. Do you want to be the one to do it?
not really. I just kind of wanted to mention it as something that bothered me.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like I'm not really super into getting into gross shit like that. But to me, that type of stuff, when I saw quote unquote my side defending that without questioning it at all, um, I think to some extent I probably went along with it for a while. I don't know that I want to say that I never went along with it, but I was disturbed by it and slowly it put me at odds with people. And that I think really damaged my perception. Not just that specifically, but other things like I don't remember what her name was, but the person claiming that the hearts on Twitter were like sexual harassment. Like I
I
can't
vaguely remember this. I don't remember their name.
I don't remember their name either, but she was claiming that when they changed it from the star to the heart, that it was encouraging sexual harassment of women, which it's like, shut the fuck up. Well, like when that was said to me, I was like, no, absolutely not. I argued with them privately, and they got absolutely insane with me. And that type of stuff just really it made me go like, what is going on here? Why can't these people critically assess their own side? Why is that so difficult for them? And that's led me very much to um, the sort of critique of fandom that I have today. The sort of everybody is working very hard to cultivate their own personal marketing demographic to endlessly promote them and their agenda and also to do everything that they say and not question them. It's when everybody says everything's like a cult now, it's I think that you're not wrong. It's just that fandoms are essentially very much like cults.
So, Peter, before we move on, I do want to finish this Lawrence Technical University thing, if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind at
I know
all.
there's so many other branching points I want to go to, but and I'm sure you do as well. But
I tend to sprawl too.
no,
That's a
that's
problem I
fine.
have.
It's fine. I like it actually. It's good for the it's good content. So the Lawrence Technical University thing, I've actually done. I'm not going to name the names necessarily, but except for
Sure.
one, the huge one, of course, Anita Sarkeesian. She and two other people are featured speakers here, but they say that they've also invited one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine other people. Oh, sorry, 10 other people. Um, and sorry, people altogether. All right, so it's like 10 people at this conference supposedly if they all go. And Anita
Uh huh.
Sarkeesian is the biggest one, of course. Everyone knows who
Sure.
she is. Um,
Her
And
jumpsuit in her promotional photo, I can't say that I am particularly critical of. It's got tigers on it. It's fun. But I don't like, why is she still relevant? I don't understand.
yeah, they think well again, look, if they wanna, like, I'll defend it a little bit, I guess, the LTU people, because like if they want to have Sarkeesian there, I think having her represent that perspective is fine, even with the
Well,
plagiarism
if you
stuff,
have the other
but
side as well, though.
only if you have the other side too, right? And they don't. In fact, out of all of their people, all three of their featured speakers, um, well, I don't know what all their views are, of course. I know Sarkeesian's extremely negative. She made false claims about GamerGate for years, and then there's the plagiarism stuff on top of that. But then there's Rachel Cowart, and you say you don't care that much about plagiarism. We can talk about that later
No,
if you want.
I don't, but that's not, in
Um,
my opinion, that it's a non-issue. Like, to me, I don't care whether
and it was
somebody plagiarized or
plagiarizing
not.
gameplay, which is like not as bad. Except she did try to pass it off as her own, which is a problem. And she never gave
I
credit
mean
to those
but
creators.
that's
They were small
that's a
channels.
problem. To me, that's a problem from a different perspective than just stealing content. It's misrepresenting who you are and what you do. That, in my opinion, there's a more specific problem there. You're representing, not just like your ideas and views in doing that. If you're using somebody else's gameplay, you're representing yourself as able to do so. Like, I don't care from a copyright perspective at all, one bit about that. But it is definitely painting herself as something that she's not.
So anyway, then they invited 9 other people who have never talked about GamerGate publicly, as far as I can tell. At
Mm,
least not under their real
that's
names. Maybe
good.
they use a pseudonym. So maybe those neutral people, or possibly neutral people, maybe they'll be fair. But it's and then they also invited 3 other anti-GamerGate people. So not a single pro GamerGater among them, and not a single like person who's neutral and has talked about it in depth. Like if they invited Koretsky, or if they did, they, to their credit, I guess, they did
Mm-hmm.
invite Chris Ferguson. They said, but they refused to
Mm.
provide his lodging, even though they're going to pay for Sarkeesian's lodging and these other people, some of these other people, presumably their lodging, but they won't do that for Chris for some reason, um, which is really weird, given that he'd be the only like person on the only person here who's actually an expert on GamerGate, as far as I can tell.
Mm-hmm.
Now, maybe these neutral people, maybe they've got like they've secretly researched it for 10 years, but they never talked about it once. Seems unlikely, but it's
One
possible,
day
I
there will be a
guess.
symposium. One day
Exactly.
this
They've
will
been
all be
saving it.
important.
They've been saving all their research all this time. They've got like 10,000 files on their computer.
They got a folder that's like it's 3 levels deep in like stuff that's labeled Gamergate Symposium.
Yeah. So all they got to, yeah, exactly. They started at the very beginning, and they've just been nonstop ever since. That's their 40 hours a week. That's their job. That's what they're doing. So so anyway, I just want, and I'm sure they're watching. Some of them are, at least. I just want I just want you to add other perspectives. Look, you can have Sarkeesian there. That's totally fine, whatever. But you fly out Raymond Wallman, fly out other people
Mm-hmm.
who are experts on this topic. Grim
Sure,
Jim,
yeah.
even you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You'd be.
I,
I trust you at the symposium, way more.
well,
I trust
I'll
if you were
say
there.
I
It,
I would not consider myself an expert on this. I would consider it just somebody who's lived through it.
yeah.
But maybe that makes more like the same kind of expert Anita Sarkeesian is on it,
Well,
though.
and I
Like,
even. Sorry.
no, to me that I wouldn't call myself like an expert on the subject. I'm obviously very familiar with it. I lived it. I lived through a lot of the things on either of the sides of it. Um,
Oh, it's just too big, dude. There's like. So, do you know Savy Leiser? Savy writes books.
yeah, writes books or
That's her
I
YouTube
want.
channel name.
Does she have yellow hair?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, I do know who that is.
So I actually suggested they bring her to the conference too, or talk to her at least.
Mm-hmm.
Because she actually just did she said she spent 2 weeks researching Gamergate, and she did a pretty good job actually. I think she did a pretty good job, except she only covered like the very beginning. and
Mm-hmm.
she left out some stuff, not on purpose, I don't think, because she said that there were a lot of broken links and stuff, and she couldn't find some of these sources, but she
Mm-hmm.
read James Desborough's book,
Mm.
and so she used that as a source, and also Zoe Quinn's book too, which you'd probably throw that out the window. That's probably
I
not
read that
useful,
book.
but
It's
oh
not a
yeah,
good book. It's a
yeah.
bad book. It
I've
is.
not
It
read
is
it,
just.
but it's Zoe Quinn, so I'm
I
not.
don't.
And she doesn't
It's not
cite
even
ever
really
sources
about
for anything,
GamerGate.
so
Like,
yeah.
it's not even really about GamerGate. That's the problem. Like,
Anyway,
it billed itself as such, but it really wasn't.
yeah. Anyway, so she read both of those books, and she spent about 2 weeks, she said, going through her research, and she made a 6-hour video about GamerGate.
Mm.
From like a more slightly anti-GamerGate perspective, I guess. She says that she's a bit more critical of it. But even that 2 weeks and 6-hour long video, it's like you only covered like the very beginning. It's
Mm-hmm.
like it's such a
Mm-hmm.
huge topic that if you want to do it well, you gotta, oh my, because it was the lives of these thousands of people over the course of a several year period. So of course it's going to be a massive thing, because
Yeah.
those people
It
did
was.
things, a lot of things,
And
a lot of
so
GamerGate
much.
things on both sides.
Yes. It's really insane the amount of stuff. Like I said, I remembered the thing that brought me to it probably 15, 16 hours after we spoke yesterday. And like, I will probably over the course of the weekend remember, like, oh, I remember this thing that happened. That was crazy. I let that the Twitter hearts thing. I remembered that while just trying to come up with other examples of like things that I found completely nuts on my side that sort of disillusioned me. Um, there's so many things to pull from that you don't spend time on a general basis. Like, my life does not revolve around any of these types of things. My
Oh,
life is.
you are so lucky.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I probably could make it revolve around these things. I would just have to loudly like endorse Gamergate, and I'm sure that I would become public enemy number one for a certain number of people. But I'm also sure that this will be taken as that by those people, so it's whatever.
Yeah. Well, anyone who would say that, like, honestly, is their opinion worth considering at that point? If they're like, oh, this
No.
guy, Peter Coffin, he's a traitor. He's a traitor and a pro JJ. He switched sides. This evil monster. Well, I mean, I don't want to say he switched sides, but he became neutral. But like, yeah,
I mean, they would say I switch
they would
sides.
say you
Like,
switched sides.
there's no way in hell that they wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
And you know, again, it's 2024. Like, asking the question, how do we solve the problem of Gamergate is like, how do
Well,
we solve
they
like
need.
what are you talking about?
It's important. No, I'm doing a historical project on this, and I actually, you know what? I'll say this. I've never probably this project here. And not just this project, but what I'm going to build it out into after I finish
Mhm.
this project in like a year and a half, 2 years, probably. When I'm done with this, I wanna be like a real journalist, and I wanna do real things in the world. And I've never felt like I had a calling in life as much as I do
Uh-huh.
now with this project and with my but I want to build this into something bigger, and I want to get the truth out about this. I think it's important to get the truth out about the Gamergate stuff, and other people do too. That's why the Airplay documentary just came out a few months ago, or maybe like 5 months ago now, or something. It came out last year, we'll say. It's important. So like, if they want to explore what really happened and explore the truth and what lessons we can take away from that, I think that that's fucking awesome. I implore
Yeah,
them
but
to do that. But
that's
they
very
need to
different
do it.
from asking the question,
How do
how
we?
do we solve the Gamergate problem?
Yeah.
Like, that's
Well,
such a
that's
simplistic view of it.
it's also, and again, maybe they just didn't know any better, and they're like, oh, I just Googled Gamergate,
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair thing to
and then they
assert.
saw
Yeah.
one article. That's possible, right? But and they're like, oh, that sounds vaguely interesting. Let me do a conference on it. Maybe that's what it was. But
It could be.
but they they gotta explore it. What actually happened? Like, if it's just gonna be Anita Sarkeesian and like five other people who are all like, the GamerGaters are Nazis. We got to stop these people at all costs. They hate women. The lesson we need to take away from, and then they're going to come away with their big conclusion right at the very end. And their big conclusion is going to be, because if they go in with the panel they've got, unless those neutral people end up being like really awesome,
Aggro. Aggressively neutral.
if they go in with the current crop of panels they got, unless again the neutral people are like really awesome for somehow, shockingly so, and like super well informed. Which again, I'm not even sure if they studied every day between now and September, could they even become an expert on the topic? I don't know.
So.
No, they could become like a medium to high level of knowledge, probably. I think
they
so.
could
I think
certainly,
they could.
in my opinion, they could certainly know more than the typical person who talks about Gamergate in public.
Yes, true. Well, yeah, because like I'm an exception. Raymond's an exception. Grim Jim's an exception. Hatman, did you see his thing that just dropped? Did you see that?
I have not seen it. No.
Plus, there's I've only started, but he thinks he's found out the origins of this whole of the social justice community in gaming. Have you heard of the Border House?
No, I have not.
Oh, it's this blog from the late 2000s, basically. It might be the mid 2000s too. But basically, almost all of the major anti-Gamergate figures, they were all associated with this blog. They were either interviewed by the blog or something along those lines. So, but I've only read part of his article, so it's massive.
That sounds very. Can you link it to me after we are done speaking?
Yeah, for sure. But anyway, I might even do a follow-up interview with him because he's been focusing his research on this like crazy, and I interviewed him 6 months ago. This is all new stuff.
There are a few places that I regard as kind of the sources of our current like left wing. I hesitate to say like total nonsense people, because obviously they're people with a lot of influence, and whether I agree with them or not is it doesn't make them nonsense. But I do think that they're nonsense. A lot of them come from Something Awful. A lot of them come from that channel Awesome.
Wait,
I don't know.
Awesome.
A lot of it.
I'm not familiar with this. I know a bunch of them are Something Awful goons, of course. Everyone knows that. But
yes.
But the Something Awful thing, I mean the channel Awesome. I'm not familiar with this.
Oh, that's where Lindsay Ellis is from.
I don't know.
You know
who that
Lindsay
is.
Ellis? Okay. Well, she is somebody who I think sort of had her rise a little after Gamergate. Video essayist, ultimately BreadTube. Channel Awesome was kind of... that's something you may want to look into. I don't know how connected to this it is, but... yeah, I would maybe try to find out if there's
I'm not
any
adding
connection.
new people, but like I don't think, at least like, unless Anita Sarkeesian approaches me tomorrow and it's like, you know what, Tachyon, I want to talk to you about Gamergate. I'll do it. But but I'm trying to avoid adding new people. But Hatman, he might be familiar with this, and if not, maybe he'll be watching the stream and he can go look into it, and we can talk about that if we do a follow-up discussion. Which this is probably the first time he's heard about this, because I meant to DM him and ask him about it, but I was going to finish reading his paper first to see if it would be worth it. But from what I've read already, given how well sourced everything is, and given that it's him and that he believes in in sourcing his shit very well, I'm sure he did a good job in the second half of the article I haven't read yet, but it's so massive that I couldn't get through it in one sitting.
I will absolutely read that.
It's like a second Zoe post. That big. Maybe not that big, but it's pretty big. And it's his third post. It's his third post of... Yeah, it's his third one. He's got two previous posts too, I believe, too. I haven't read those either.
Okay. Yeah, I'm very interested in that. I would like to read it.
Yeah, I'll definitely link it.
Great.
And where was I going with this? I'm sorry. Oh yeah, I'm trying not to add new people, but it could be worth exploring, because I've not heard of this channel Awesome stuff, and that could be an interesting
It's Nostalgia Critic. Do you remember Nostalgia Critic at all?
Only vaguely. I didn't watch their stuff. I know the name.
A lot of the H Bomber guy, I don't think he was actually actively affiliated with it, but I think that he kind of came up somehow adjacent to it. It's a difficult... There's a whole another thing with BreadTube, because BreadTube isn't exactly a response to Gamergate, but it also kind of is in certain ways. I don't know. There's a lot. It's an interesting set of So I've been more concerned with BreadTube than GamerGate personally. That's kind of my white whale.